Hello everyone, welcome to Central Florida, and this is the tail end of Tropical Storm Debbie. The effects were rather mild here, lots of wind though, lots of wind and lots of rain, but nothing's down. But I've got a book haul from July that I want to show you what I got. I'm going to go back inside and talk about some books. Thank you for joining me today. I do appreciate it. Salutations. A Senorita Tropical Storm Debbie has moved on up, farther up away from my house. We did get some wind and some rain. And when you live in the woods and you got great big trees around, sometimes the wind from a storm gets worrisome. What are them trees going to do? But I watched a movie one time. I don't remember the name of it. It had Leonardo DiCaprio. And a lady said, the branches blow and move around, but you watch the trunk and it stays stiff. And so the trunk stayed stiff and the trees stayed up. The branches stayed where they belong. Anyway, no real issues here. But in the month of July, I did pick up some books. And I've done some videos for some of those books, unboxing videos and reviews and stuff like that. But when I looked around, I realized there were a lot of other things I picked up that I didn't show. So that's what I'm going to do here, a book haul video. I'll kind of show some of the stuff that I didn't show you. And I was amazed when I started pulling all these things out, setting them over here to the side, and over here to the side, how many books I picked up. I think I got a problem. No big deal. But I want to show you some of the things I got. And right off the bat, I'm going to start with Amazon. I bought book on Amazon, eBay, lots of bookstores, the Goodwill, some thrift stores, a lot of different things. But right off the bat, I'm excited about this one because I didn't even know it was coming until it was. And that's a new F. Paul Wilson book. Probably my favorite author, walking God's green earth, is F. Paul Wilson. And this is the Upwelling, book 1 of The Hidden. And so I found out this book was coming and I bought it on Amazon just as quick as I could. Can't wait to jump in and read it. I guess if there's a book 1, there's at least a book 2. I wonder how many more are coming. But F. Paul Wilson, the author of The Keep and The Tomb, the Repairman Jack series, I've been a fan of his since 2000, Y2K, 2001, I think I started reading F. Paul Wilson. And so it begins for Sam Sermon, the first step toward learning that everything she thought she knew about her husband is wrong, perhaps even his humanity. But if he's not human, what is he? Pam is one of 3 lives that will be drawn together by the apocalypse of the Upwelling. The other 2 are Chan and Danny, but their worlds are already in chaos. A few weeks ago, a fierce storm accompanied by an upwelling from the Atlantic abyssal plain tore into Atlantic City. When it receded, the city and its 25,000 inhabitants were gone without a trace. Chan and Danny remember being in the city that day, but the 10 hours during which the upwelling occurred have been wiped from their memories. They want those memories back, or do they? Did they witness something so unspeakably ghastly that their minds can't face it? Or worse, was that ghastly thing something they did? And worse yet, were they responsible for the upwelling? So I'm excited about new books from F. Paul Wilson. Keep them coming. I'm in. So let's see. I went to a bookstore called Gottwals Books. Gottwals? Gottwals. Gottwals. So it's not Gottwals. I guess it would be Gottwals. And I picked up a couple things. I recently read a story collection by Michael Marshall Smith. And I liked it enough that I said, I got to read some more stuff from the author. Michael Marshall Smith also writes under the name Michael Marshall, and another name which I can't remember. But they had the Straw Man at Gottwals Books for $3.97. I had the shot, so I took it to put this one on the TBR, the books what gots to be read pile. So some of these book hauls are books that I got to read, and I find them at a price that I can live with to be able to read and then pass them on down the line. What else from Gottwals was something that to me was a little bit more exciting. It is a Matthew Scudder first edition, first print book, which is cool. But sometimes you just know. And you open up a book and I look, and occasionally I find them signed. And this one is a first edition, first print, signed by the author. And in my opinion, signed is always better. This is, I think, the 16th Matthew Scudder novel. And if you've seen the movie with Liam Neeson, it's Walk Among the Tombstones, is what it's called. Pretty good movie, but a great series. I recommend it. Go right back to the very beginning. The very first book in that series is The Sins of the Fathers. And I dug it, and it's a great series. Glad to be able to add another signed first hardcover copy to my collection. I think it was $10. $10 for a signed hardcover works for me. I'll take it. All right, now I want to show you what I picked up at a flea market. My wife and my youngest son went to Iceland on a mother-son trip. Great, we do stuff like that. Trips for the family, trips for father and son, father and other son, mother and son. Just went to Iceland. That's cool, man. That's cool. Anyway, while they were gone, my older son and I went to a little local flea market we go to now and then, usually just to get a hot dog and wander around a little bit. But they got a toy store out in the middle of nowhere, and next to it is books on a table. Books for $1. So I'm looking at these books for $1, and I picked this thing up, and I just thought it looked cool. But then I looked a little closer, and it's a choose your own adventure story. And I don't own a single choose your own adventure story. However, in probably 5th, 4th, 6th grade, in that part of my life, I remember reading them at school. I don't even know where I got them from. Probably somebody gave them to my mom. She gave them to me. Glad I would read something. But I always loved the choose your own adventure books. And then I got older and grew up, and I'd never seen or touched or read one since. But this one, it just felt cool. The Time Machine. A Sword of the Samurai. And it's by Michael Reeves and Steve Perry. But the Choose Your Own Adventure novels, I'm excited because I just had a lot of fun with these. And it was $1. Essentially, you'll read a little piece, and then you'll come to a point where you have to make a choice. This or that, yes or no, A or B, or C or D, or whatever. And based on your choice, you turn to a certain page, and then you read on. So you get to contribute a little bit to the story. And it was fun. One of the things I noticed as a kid that you didn't have to read the whole book because you're making choices which skips certain things. But I enjoyed them. And on a whim, I saw that this was a choose your own adventure book. This one's different. It doesn't look like sword and sorcery. It looks like more samurai and time travel, and can't wait to jump into this little deal. Another book for $1. A book for $1 on a table at a flea market. I'm going to write a song like that one day. It's going to make me a fortune. But I grew up with a mother who loved Conan, and she read all the Conan books. And we watched the Conan movies, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Conan the Barbarian, Conan the Destroyer. And I've never read a Conan story at all. Now, I know that this one's L. Sprague de Camp. He sort of picked the series up. He's not the original author. But I figured when I run across Conan books, I need to pick them up and set them over there somewhere. And as I get to it, I will start reading Conan. And I figure I'll read more in line with the series. But this was a chance to get a Conan book for $1. Robert E. Howard's Immortal Warrior Conan, number 18, and the Spider God. So this one I picked up for $1. A book for $1 to add to the stack. A book's what gots to be read. A couple more books for $1 from the flea market by the airport. And this one I got because I collect movie novelizations. And this is not a movie novelization. This is what you'd call a movie tie-in version of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. The 6,500,000 copy best-selling novel by Ken Kesey. But as a person who collects movie novelizations, I also read a lot of books that were made into movies. And what I'd find is that eventually they'd put the movie's picture on the cover, and I always thought that looked cool. I've got some of a variety of movie types of all sorts. But I then eventually started saying, I like movie tie-in novels. I ought to make a place on the shelf for the cool ones, the good books or the good movies and the pictures and stuff on them. And you still got the same great story, but it ties it into the movie. So I picked this one up, A Book for a Buck. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And man, I like the cover, and it'll be nestling happily on my shelf rather soon. But A Book for a Buck, and the last Books for a Bucks. And these actually are, I guess they bought them two for $1 at Walmart a long time ago. But I needed a reader copy of Journey to the Center of the Earth by Jules Verne. It was $1. I had the shot, and so I took it. Books, what gots to be read. You can find books in the strangest of places sometimes. All right, I stopped at a thrift store heading north. I was probably heading to Georgia. I was heading north, I don't know. And I stopped at this big thrift store and went inside, wandered around a little bit. It was near the city of Stark, Florida, somewhere around there. Looking around, and I found a book to buy. It cost me $3.95. I've never read anything from Jack Ketchum, and Off Season seems to be one that's well received for a Jack Ketchum novel. So it was a shot to buy a book for $4. And finally solved the problem of never having read Jack Ketchum. Read this one, decide, do I need to read more or do I don't need to read more? But anyway, you can pick up some cool stuff in the strangest of places. Now, I've been well-traveled. The month of July was well-traveled, but I also was in Jacksonville, Florida, and I stopped in at 2nd and Charles. And at Jacksonville, Florida, I bought a lot of books from the 2nd and Charles, and I bought some of this time. This one here, one of my favorite authors, Walking God's Green Earth, is a guy by the name of Blake Crouch. I've got a lot of favorite authors, but I've read five Blake Crouch books and loved all 5 dearly. Fabulous books. I read, what did I read? I read Dark Matter, Recursion, and the Wayward Pines Trilogy. All 3 of those Wayward Pines Trilogy books. It's a trilogy. I read 3 of them. Anyway, Upgrade is his latest, and he's I guess you might call him, science fiction, like 2 separate things. Science and fiction. Not exactly science fiction. A lot like H.G. Wells, perhaps. Or maybe even a Jules Verne, that type of science fiction, where there's a lot of science in my fiction. But Upgrade, I've got a couple of signed copies that were pretty cool, but I haven't read the book yet. So this one at 2nd and Charles, they had this trade paperback book, used, discounted. So now I've got a great candidate to put on the TBR list. I like to read books that I don't have to worry about whether or not I damage them while I'm reading them. So I travel, so I like to be able to stick them books in a bag and not worry if they get mashed, put them on the back seat and not worry about if something gets pushed into them, and things like that. Leave them on the kitchen table, whatever. If I've got to read a book that's for my collection that's nice or signed or expensive, I got to be very careful with it. And I'd rather just not worry about the book in hand. I don't abuse them, but I don't have to worry about it, keeping it in pristine, precious condition. So I do like reading copies like this when I get the opportunity. But bookstores like 2nd and Charles, the opportunities, used bookstores, you have a great opportunity to pick up stuff that you might not ordinarily pick up. And this one here, $2.25. I never heard of the book. But it had the title was Raptor Red by Robert T. Backer. And I don't know why, but I picked it up off the shelf. And I looked at it just a little bit. And it says, Michael Crichton may be a great storyteller, but even he wouldn't have the nerve to write a dinosaur novel told from the dino's point of view. That's from People magazine. So Raptor Red seemed interesting. It's a raptor, and it looks like a baby raptor. And they're going on an adventure, and it's told from the raptor's point of view. So I bought it to read it. Whatever. All it takes is time and $2.25 out of my life. So I've been reading some more Bradbury lately. Ray Bradbury is an author that I'd read some novels, but never read the short story collections. but I'm trying to remedy that. And I found Dandelion Wine for $3, so I get to read a collection of short stories from Ray Bradbury for $3. And looking forward to that again. Just another book to read. It was affordable. I had the shot and I took it. And I talked about Michael Marshall Smith, and this wraps up the Second and Charles portion. I got some more stuff I want to show you here, though. And that's The Intruders, Michael Marshall. The Intruders for $3 at Second and Charles. Another opportunity to read a book from an author to get a taste. But look at the cover on this. I love the artwork on this soft cover book. It's not for the collection. It's for reading. But it looks really cool. So I'm going to read The Intruders and looking forward to it. Now, I went to a Goodwill store. I was in Port St. Lucie area. Anyway, I stopped at a Goodwill and I picked up some books at the Goodwill. And I paid $7.92 for these two books. The first one is Grady Hendrix' Final Girl Support Group. And this is another familiar story. I've got signed editions of this book, signed limited editions of this book. And I've read 4 Grady Hendrix books. I really liked 3 of them. One was okay. But I want to read more, and this was on the list of books what got to be read. But at the Goodwill, they had a very affordable hardcover copy. So I can read it without worrying about having to really take good care of my stuff. Grady Hendrix is a fun author, an author that has a good time in his writing. And I want to say Grady Hendrix, the favorite story of his that I've read so far is My Best Friend's Exorcism. I strongly recommend that book. I loved it a lot. And so I'm looking forward to the Final Girl Support Group. And this one here, golly, I don't know. George Carlin, you ever hear of him? Famous comedian, George Carlin, The Last Words. And I've seen a bunch of stand-up shows by George Carlin on the TV over the years. Very enjoyable. Very interesting way of looking at the world and stuff like that. A great talker also. But a lot of fun. I always enjoyed watching his shows. And now I get to read what was going to be the biography, but I think it was finished posthumously. And that is George Carlin. So I bought that to read it. I can only imagine how good it would be. But that was $8 for those 2 books. Now, one more bookstore, and then I'm going to show you some of the stuff I picked up on eBay. So this bookstore is called the Paperback Book Exchange, and it's in Newport Richey, Florida, off of Highway 19. And I'll show you some of the stuff I picked up there. Now, I mentioned movie tie-ins, and this is another example of such. I'm a fan of Richard Matheson. I've read some of his short stories. I've read some of his novels. But Stir of Echoes is one that I have not read. I've got some pretty cool, at least one pretty cool, signed, numbered edition of Stir of Echoes. And I really dug the movie with Kevin Bacon in it. And so they had this copy here for $2.98. I had the shot and I took it. So I get to read Killing Two Birds with One Stone, one of Richard Matheson's most well-known novels. And I get to add a book to the movie tie-in collection section. Next up, one more again. This one would be a movie novelization of Beneath the Planet of the Apes. And I've read Pierre Boulier's Planet of the Apes, and I really loved that book. And I really loved the Charlton Heston movie, The Planet of the Apes. And here is a sequel novelization to the movie Planet of the Apes. The movie and the book went different directions. I won't spoil anything, but they went different directions. So the novelization of the movie is not going to follow the actual original book. But I collect movie novelizations for movies that I dig, and Beneath the Planet of the Apes was a good one. It's not as good as the 1968 Charlton Heston, but it was a good one. I like the folks. I like the addition of the folks that live beneath. It added a new wrinkle. It made it feel even a little bit more Star Trek-y than the original had. But moving on, another movie novelization. This book, the Paperback Book Exchange, they've got a section which she calls, the lady that owns the store, she calls Books to Movies. Well, in that Books to Movies section, there's a lot of books from movies also. And so Blade Trinity is another one, a novel by Natasha Rhodes. And I liked the movie Blade. I didn't really like the sequel that much. And I only saw Blade Trinity once. I borrowed the DVD from my sister when it was new. And I actually liked the Blade Trinity movie quite a bit when I watched it. But I haven't watched it since. I don't know if I'd still like it or not. But it was there. It was on the shelf. I got the movie novelization. A bookmark. They gave me a bookmark for the Paperback Book Exchange. Couple of more. These were books I bought because they're books I needed to read. One is Stab in the Dark. I talked about Matthew Scudder from Lawrence Block. Stab in the Dark is one of the Matthew Scudder novels that I hadn't read, and all I've got are more rare signed copies. This was kind of tough to get in the beginning. So Stab in the Dark, and the other one is Mortal Stakes, Robert B. Parker's Spencer series. Another great series, kind of similar, in the same vein, although not exact. Ex-cops who are now something like a private investigator. Spencer is officially a private investigator. Scudder is unofficially a private investigator. He does private investigation, but he's not official. He just helps people sometimes. For money, sometimes. And then Robert B. Parker's Spencer series is fabulous. So these were books from both series that I didn't have and I need to read. That's why I got them. Now I want to talk about some of the stuff I bought on eBay, and then we'll call it a day. How's that sound? But I talked about Blake Crouch, and I talked about movie tie-ins, and I talked about signed books. Bam, bam, bam. Blake Crouch, Dark Matter, absolutely fabulous book. It's terrific. You must read it. If you haven't already, you must. Great book. I recommend it to anybody. Young, old, male, female, whatever. I'd recommend it. Great book. It touches on a lot of things that people care about. But it is now streaming a series based on the book, streaming on Apple TV, which I do not have. However, they made a movie tie-in trade paperback version, and these people who do, apparently they do business directly with Blake Crouch. He does signings there at Maria's Bookshop, and they'll sell Blake Crouch signed books. They also gave me a sticker and a bookmark. But Maria's Bookshop was selling signed copies of the movie tie-in trade paperback book. And when they first offered them for sale, I thought to myself, I've got a lot of signed copies of this book. And I don't have Apple TV, and therefore I may not anytime soon see this series. And I passed. But when somebody was selling a book on eBay, and it ended up being available for less than the published price, I had a shot, and I took it. And I buy it now. Buy it now. I bid it, I bought it now. I bought it on eBay now. Bought it now. But it arrived, I'm having trouble with the words today. It arrived at my house today. Not today. But I got it, and it's good. It's on the shelf with multiple signed versions of Dark Matter from Blake Crouch. But it's all good because it's a great book, and I strongly recommend it. Now, 2 more books. I say almost every day, my favorite book I've ever read is Alas Babylon by an author named Pat Frank. And I've got some pretty cool, I don't have any great versions. I have a first edition, first print, but it's an ex-library book, so it's not in great shape. And then I have a first edition, first print, UK version I bought from Australia. Easton Press has a copy out there that I want to get. I just don't want to pay the asking price for it, so I still don't have it. But I've got several first edition, first print books from the author, Pat Frank, and I've read several, and I liked them, although Last Babylon was by far my favorite. but I don't have anything signed by the author. And I thought, my favorite author of my favorite book, I ought to have something signed. So on eBay, this one came up, An Affair of State, a novel by Pat Frank, came up for sale, and it's not perfect, and I've never read the book, and very few other people have. It probably had 5 or 10, 15 good reviews. Not many for a book that's been around for probably 70 years. But it was signed for Terry Blockman with best wishes, Pat Frank. And I bought this book just to have a Pat Frank signature. So there it is, a personalized Pat Frank signature. I bought it just for that. And I intend probably at some point to read this one. And hopefully I'll love it too. But honestly, I bought it because it's signed by the author of my favorite book. And I probably will never get a signed copy of Alas Babylon. And if I don't, at least I'll have a signed copy of something. All right, now the last one I got was an eBay purchase as well. And this is a book from a series that I've enjoyed quite a bit. That's the Harry Dresden Files, the Harry Dresden stories from an author named Jim Butcher. And it would be called probably urban fantasy. Harry Dresden is a wizard living in sort of modern day Chicago. And so if you think, I just talked about Spencer and I talked about Scudder. Harry Dresden's a lot like Spencer, Robert E. Parker Spencer, except he's a wizard and he's fighting monsters of all sorts. So he's just like him, right? But no, it's actually very similar in many ways, the way he gets into trouble and the types of jobs he takes. And in fact, Jim Butcher said he's inspired a lot by Robert Parker Spencer series. And it reads, you read Spencer, you read this, you'll see the feel, the similar feel to it. So there's a lot of difference, but it's also feels very similar. And this one is a collection of 3 or 4 short stories or novellas from that series. And it is signed, numbered 412 out of 1,000. And I love signed books. I love Bigfoot. I'm a fan. I don't know if the Bigfoot is real. I've never seen the Bigfoot. But I always wished, even from a little boy, I always wished, hoped, holding out hope, maybe. But this comes from Subterranean Press, and I've shown you some of these with what looks like a fake leather cover. Foil stamp spine, which looks cool, but it's also illustrated. There were quite a few illustrations in this book. First, let's see what the stories are. Can I find a table of contents? And this is Stories from the Dresden Files, Working for Bigfoot. Let me find it. It's got the B is for Bigfoot. I was a teenage Bigfoot, and Bigfoot on campus. So 3 stories in this one. And when I got it, I was flipping through to see if there was artwork. And I found quite a bit of cool illustrations in this book. And it is Vincent Chung artwork. Let's see if I can flip through and find a few for you while we're here. We got all our gear. We're ready to rock and roll. More black and white Vincent Chung illustrations. I love interior illustrations in books. And so when I flipped through these, I saw a lot of pictures with Bigfoot and pictures with aliens. And I haven't read any of these stories yet. But I wonder, it makes me wonder, because there are a lot of theories out there about Bigfoot. And some people tie them into space aliens and UFOs, extraterrestrials. Some folks tie them into thought to be extinct apes. Some folks have all sorts of cool theories about the Bigfoot, but I don't. Uh-oh. Cover your eyes, darling. Uh-oh. Cover your eyes. Interior illustrations. I think everything's covered up there. Kind of. And more. Look, there's more. Awesome. Awesome artwork. And so it's a neat addition to the collection. I get to add to my signed limited Subterranean Press Harry Dresden Jim Butcher collection. And I'm working for Bigfoot. Anyway, I can think of no more lies to tell. Thank you for your time. I do truly appreciate it. C'est la vie, baby. Doo-doo. Hello, everybody.